for the year. And normally I would start the webinar by saying, go grab a cup of tea or grab a cup of coffee. But I think today would just be a prompt way of saying, rather go grab yourself a McDonald's drink, or perhaps tonight grab yourself a burger and enjoy the webinar with us. With our use of Uber Eats and many other different platforms, it's quite easy to get something delivered today. So skip out on the tea and rather enjoy perhaps a nice drink on McDonald's. So without a say, congratulations and welcome to Cornelius Marlele. He is joining us today at the Sector Geospatial Analytics in Retail webinar. And we are so very, very happy to have him join us today. So before we begin today's webinar with Cornelius, we just have a few admin points that we'd like to begin with. So first of all, a very welcome to everybody here. Please can we ask that you turn off all of your microphones as well as your camera, just so that we can make sure that our internet stays stable. Few notices from Sector. So don't forget to sign up for your 2026 membership. I know it's the beginning of the year and I cannot believe we are already on the 10th of February. It just feels like the other day we were saying welcome to 2026. So join Sector. There are so many amazing benefits of being part of the Southern African Geography Teachers Association, and joining our webinars is just one of those amazing benefits. I'm sure you would have seen this week we had a notice, thank you very much, to remind our teachers to join PrepShare. Remember, PrepShare is one of those amazing resources where if you share your resources and you're part of our sector community, you have access to a whole lot of cycle tests, examinations, tests, activities. And especially if you're a one-man school and on a complete island and you have no support, this is really an amazing place for you to just go get some inspiration, or just really, you don't have time to do an assessment, look at what other people have shared. So don't forget, closing date is around the corner, and don't forget to share your resources. Second notice for today is don't forget we are having our academic conference. It is hosted this year by Kingsmead College, and the save the date has gone out to everybody, well as sharing your interest. Please do not forget to complete this. It is going to be an amazing conference. I've heard some rattle about what's happening, some ideas of guest speakers, and I really think this is something that you need to push towards your principals and come and join us for this amazing sector conference. Last notice for today, don't forget about our amazing GIS fundamental courses. If you haven't signed up, you really do have to sign up. We have 2 course dates out at the moment. We have the 16th to 27th of February, as well as the 29th of June and 10th of July. And all of these can be booked through Cartoza and Sector. If you need more information, you're welcome to send us a message on the helpline or else in the comments of this webinar, and we will contact you with more information. Huge benefits of going on the course. I mean, I was looking at this earlier, and I really, for what you are going to learn over the course of the few days, you know, it's something incredibly beneficial, and I think every geography teacher should attend. If you look at the outcomes, there are working with vector and raster data, creating maps through QGIS, source GIS data, and everything that interests you out of this course truly is going to be in our webinar today. So if you are inspired through today's webinar, I really do encourage you to join Sector as a community and start going on some of these amazing courses that are hosted through Cartoza. But before I take up too much time, and we don't want the ice to start melting in your McDonald's drink, we are going to start with a brief introduction to introduce today's webinar host. So without further ado, we're going to introduce Cornelius. He is a geospatial analytics specialist with an established expertise in retail strategy and market optimization. He currently leads McDonald's development research team, where he provides strategic direction on restaurant rollout, market analytics, and development pipeline planning. His work is centered on leveraging advanced location intelligence to inform high impact decisions that strengthen long term retail performance and growth. Cornelius has completed his honors degree, majoring in geography, good choice, and is currently studying towards his EMBA. Cornelius also plans to focus his thesis on increasing the use of geospatial analytics in business decision making. Wow, what an amazing bio Cornelius has. So I'm going to stop sharing for now, and we are going to hand over to Cornelius. So welcome, Cornelius. Welcome to SAGTA, and you are welcome to start showing your presentation now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, there, Kirsty. Thank you for the invite again. I'm really grateful to be part of, to share. Yeah, I'm just grateful for the opportunity. So I'm gonna share my screen before I go on. Please bear with me. Just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you.
100%. So thank you very much again, Kirsty. So, and thank you everyone for joining through.
Sorry, Cornelius, can I just ask, can you please close or just minimize the Google Meet on the right-hand side?
Okay, let me see if I can do that quickly.
So if you just say hide.
Okay, is that it? Is that okay?
It still looks like it's on the side. So if you just, there we go, like that's perfect. Thank you.
All good, all good. So I'll be taking through what we do as McDonald's, and thank you again, Christy, for the introduction. I quickly went through on the names of the people that are in attendance, and I saw one of the persons there whom I think is or was my varsity teacher. Then I got nervous, like really nervous now, to say I'll be presenting to somebody that had taught me before. Like Christy mentioned, I'm a geographer at heart. I believe that geography is the study of everything and should be included in every sector of business. But then today I'm just going to take you through to one of the examples of what we use or how we use it in industry, especially within the QSR space. Okay. So in terms of what I will be sharing with you, primarily I'll be giving you an introduction, which will comprehensively show what we do or how we use it, especially as McDonald's South Africa. And then secondly, we're gonna then learn and understand our location DNA by showing the process or an example of how we do that. And then we're gonna also jump in quickly on an example of how we use it to do our gap analysis, as well as the market potential estimate and our rollout strategy, as well as how to support our operations part of the business, as well as how to know which locations we need to close, which markets we need to optimize, etc., etc. So what we basically do at McDonald's, especially within the research team, is to do two things. One is to support development, to identify which locations to open, what type of restaurant format we need to do. Is it a drive-through? Is it a non-drive-through? And should it be either or? What types of sales are we expected to generate in those restaurants? And once that restaurant has been opened and handed over to operations, we allow it for about 12 months to operate. And then 12 months later, we go back in to try and understand whether the sales that we had estimated based on our understanding of locations and markets is the actual sales that realized. And we call that process in EVA, a estimate versus actual score. So within the 4 years that I've been at McDonald's, our EVA score has been within 10% of estimated sales. Globally, we need to at least be within plus 10 estimates versus actual, or minus 10, within that range. And we've been very, very accurate in terms of the sales that we have estimated based on the geographic knowledge and applications that we do, which I will take you through. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is what we do. We do a store rollout strategy, which then simply means we identify where we need to open and what store formats. Secondly, we do our market gap analysis or market potential study. So this is basically scanning throughout the country using geographic or geospatial systems for us to understand where we need to grow, where our gaps lie. I'll show an example later on of how this looks and how it all comes together. Again, we do our pipeline management and reporting. From a pipeline management point of view is once we have identified our gaps using the gap analysis of the market potential study that we do, we will then identify markets where we need to send out our property brokers or property specialists to go look for exact microsite locations, which we will then further reassess to determine whether they check all the boxes in terms of a good site. You might have realized that within country, especially in South Africa, we might be having some of the best locations because there's a process that we have employed and have used over the years, which its gist or its core lies on us understanding our location, which is what we really do. So once we have identified those locations, we send out guys to go hunt for those microsites, we reassess them, and then we run the business case over to the board and we open a restaurant. Another thing that we do is to also analyze big data that comes within the business. So what we do then is we just add a special reference to that information, and we then see the world in 3D. We get to understand what products needs to be sold in which market, which caters for what profile, etc., etc. All of that we do in-house as well. We also do site assessments, as I've explained. Once we have identified a market, we'll send the guys to go find the X and Y, which is the microsite, and then we'll assess it from there. And all of this research is guided by what we call our trade area survey or primary research. This basically includes us going into individual restaurants, putting in a survey, let's say a sample of 800 surveys within one restaurant over a period of 4 days. In that 4 days, we need to at least interview 800 customers at every hour that each restaurant would trade. So we'll get a sample from 6 a.m. to 7, from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. each hour with a specific quota based on that restaurant's trade. If the restaurant is a strong breakfast, lunch and dinner restaurant, so the quota per hour will be based on that restaurant performance. So this is taking now our transaction data per hour and then planning out our quota for surveys. Once we have received that information, we then get to understand a couple of things about our customers. Primarily is how far do they travel from home to a McDonald's, and from that we get to do our trade area delineation or catchment area. We also get other information in terms of preference. What routes do they use coming to a McDonald's? And all of that information is then used to make those decisions. I know I've touched just a little bit on that, but then it's broader than that because there is as well another system which is now widely used in markets where they use mobile network movement data. So hopefully we'll get into that as well if there's still a bit of time. And we also then do our market potential assessment, which is analyzing existing restaurants to determine whether we are fully servicing those trade areas or catchment areas, depending on how you call them. If not, what is the strategy that we can employ for us to get additional information, for us to get additional sales and make sure that we are capturing the required market share, as well as asset optimization. So if you're asking what I'm talking about, I just went clockwise on the slide that I have shared and gave you a summary. So now we'll just deep dive into the actual work in me giving you an example of how our process flows, as well as how we conduct the actual work. So this is our research approach. Firstly, we need to map all our stores to roof, meaning the actual X and Y coordinates of that store, individual restaurants. And we are currently sitting on about 410 restaurants. So we would map those to roof and make sure that we map all the competitors within surrounding to the same geographic level, which is now rooftop mapping. Then once we are done mapping our restaurant, we then classify them by type of geography. This could either be a metropolitan area or a small town or a city, right? The importance of us doing that is we have since learned that each geographic setting would use QSRs in a different way. There are various and different shopping patterns which are related. For example, a customer that will buy from a McDonald's in Sandton, for example, is similar to a customer that will be in a similar type of geographic setting as Sandton within a metropolitan areas. So those customers have similar propensity to QSRs, as well as how they would use specific restaurants. And we will then split it into metros, which is our metropolitan areas. We'll split it into cities. These are now towns that are bigger, are not metros, but then they are big enough. For example, we would speak about your Rustenburgs, we would speak about your Polokwanis, your Nelspruits. They're not big enough as per our definition to be included as metropolitan areas, but then they are not small enough to just be mere towns. So we need to differentiate between cities and then towns. Towns would be smaller than cities, but not bigger than metropolitan areas. And how we distinguish this is the size of our addressable population. Our addressable populations, in common terms, you would say it's our core target market. So we would use that to define those geographic settings. The next level then is to classify our restaurant by location type. By location type, I'm basically meaning the type of the microsite or the microsite dynamics. It's either that restaurant is within a CBD setting, which is a typical Joburg, Pretoria, Durban and Cape Town CBD, or is it in a retail node wherein it's a drive-through within where there's a conglomerate of shopping centers and it's freestanding there. A good example, especially in the Joburg area or the larger Johannesburg area, would be a Cresta location in Blackheath. That would be a node type of restaurant. We'll then also classify them in terms of, it will be your CBD types of locations, it would be your retail node, it would be your shopping center type of locations. And within shopping center, we further split it, whether it's within the mall paired or within the shopping center itself in the food court. The importance of that as well is because we have realized that our restaurants are used differently by different customers. And it's important when we want to understand the DNA of our restaurant, especially from a location point of view, for us to understand those nuances and those differences among the restaurants. Right. The fourth step then is to just understand the demographics around each of the restaurants, which then we delineate a trade area or a catchment area, as it's called within the industry. And this trade area is based on the research that I've mentioned already that we do in terms of trade area surveys, right? And usually the size of the trade area would vary by geographic setting as well as the types of location. So you then are able to see those different nuances. And after all of that is done, we get to calibrate our model and then to establish our benchmarks, right? Once we have established our benchmarks, we then get to understand in which types of locations do our restaurants do exceptionally well. Is it in metropolitan? Is it in metros as well as in freestanding, or is it in metros and drive-throughs? Is it in metros and shopping centers, or is it in metro CBDs, right? And we then distinguish whether it's a drive-through or a mall store. So we get to find a DNA of where our restaurants would perform and how they would perform in each setting and the type of locations. I'll show you an example. Let me skip that one and come to this one. So once we have done all of that, which I've briefly explained, we get to something like this. We get to understand in which types of locations do we do well, in which types of locations do we not do well, and what sales do we anticipate in each types of the locations, right? This then informs our store location strategy, which then means whenever we go out there and look for opportunities, if it's in the metropolitan areas, our first area of preference would be in a CBD location because that's where we get most of the sales. That's where we generate, that's where we capture most of the market share. If we go to cities, which is the first type of location we need to look for? And there it says we need to then look at retail nodes. So whenever we go looking for these types of opportunities, we now already know what type in the type of geographic setting we need to be looking at these types of locations for us to maximize our market penetration as well as to maximize our core market share, which is what we are competing for with other competitors, right? So that defines our benchmark in terms of our location strategy, how we get to find those types of locations, what we look for, etc., etc. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying it now. Then on this map is just showing, I know I'm presenting to geographers. My map is missing a lot of elements. And that's simply because in corporate, people don't really understand maps, which is something that I feel strongly about and want to change. And just to bring everyone into confidence, I am not, what's the right word? I am not abandoning the geographic way of doing maps. This is just for show because they're not gonna read it, etc., etc. So we map all our restaurant and we classify them, and then we get to understand our location. This then shows an example of how we get to do it. We delineate a trade area. Once that trade area is delineated within a GIS system, we get to pull the demographics within that area. And from those demographics, based on the information that has been shared by Stats SA on the community survey, as well as expenditures that they share, we are able to calculate within that trade area the total market potential that is within that area, especially for QSRs. Once we have determined that, we are able to understand how much of that are we capturing based on the restaurant's actual sales, right? So to explain the map a bit, we have employed our trade area is guided based on drive distances. These drive distances are aligned to the research that we have done in trade area survey because we have asked our customers how far do they travel to get to a McDonald's or to get to the closest QSR. Just to sideline a bit, so in my previous life, before I joined McDonald's, I used to support various other QSRs doing the same work, the likes of KFC, Burger King, Zebros when they're still alive, fish and chips company, as well as a bit on the famous brands. They use the same approach, they use the same way of doing things. So this technique or this way of doing things is not only applicable to the QSR space, but then the same type of methodology goes over to other land uses. For example, if a hospital needs to be designed, you probably need a hospital license. And for you to justify a hospital license, you need to determine whether there is demand for those specific services that you want to offer. If it's it's X number of renal beds or heart disease beds or psychiatric beds, you need to justify those number of beds based on the demand and the supply that is available in the market. So the same type of procedure would be applicable. Obviously, in terms of your indicators, you would use different indicators. In the QSR space, we use sales, we use as well market potential, whereas in the medical space, they would use number of beds demand as a model, but then they use the same principles, they use the same geographic process and procedure to get to that level of detail and information. So I just wanted to share that. Okay, back to this. So once we have done our benchmark, we now understand our stores in terms of what works well, where, and how. We are able to do a couple of things. One, we are able to go look for other opportunities within the same type of geographic settings as well as type of locations and secure that, because we know we're gonna generate benchmark sales or the sales that are acceptable. This is simply because we have realized, based on the research that we have done, based on the analysis that we have done, that customers within a similar type of location would use our restaurant the same way. And this has been proven over the years through the performance that we have done. So once we have that, we know in these types of areas, we're definitely gonna capture X and Y market share. And this then is tested 12 months later, once we have opened the restaurant using the EVA score, which in our case has been very excellent, showing that our process, our methodology in this regard is yielding great results and good for the business and good for our rollout. And it does give us a competitive advantage within the market stand. Okay, so once we have done our benchmark, the next thing that we need to do is to identify our gaps within country. So the process behind that is we would then generate in our GIS system. We're currently using S3 ArcGIS Pro. Previously, we were using Map Info. We do chip in there and there when we need to do our data conversion on QGIS, because I still believe it's one of the best systems. It is an open source system as well. It does much, much better than commercial products. That's my opinion. So once we then do a grid system across the country. It's a 3 kilometer by 3 kilometer grid across the country, and then we overlay that with terms of with points of interest. These points of interest would include other competitors, which we have mapped. It would include filling stations. It will include shopping centers by size. It will include obviously the demographics of the area. There are various vendors in the industry that sell that. We prefer not to generate our own demographic sets. I think it's quite a complex process to do, but then the other mapping we do ourselves in-house, like your competitor mapping, to ensure that we have updated information in the system, as well as other points of interest, right? So once we have done that, we run that onto a model. So that model would then identify areas where there is a substantial amount of competitors, because that's where bulk of the retail activity would happen. As you would expect, this would be clustered primarily around where there are big shopping centers, but then we also do look at other points of interest as well. And once that is done, we would have a grid system across the country or across the footprint of the country, and it will be we would then run a thematic on it in terms of which ones would be high, which ones would be low, so that we can be able to narrow down. And then after we overlay our restaurants there, and each of the restaurant that is existing will then create a buffer of about 3 kilometers, depending on the geographic setting. If it's in CBDs, that radius would be smaller. And then each area that is outside, each area that is within a radius, we would term it a safest area, meaning we can't open another McDonald's there unless its exceptional condition of performance. Maybe I should touch a bit on that. So in our rollout strategy, we would then look into the performance of each restaurant and then determine whether there's still money that is left on the table, and then we would open another restaurant within a 3 kilometer radius. If that is not the case, we will not open in an area within 3 kilometer radius of an existing restaurant. So once we have ran the model, identified those locations where we need to uh, open as gaps, the next thing that we will do is to quantify those gaps in terms of market potential as well as what sales we think we can get, which is then the next slide. So for non-metropolitan areas, for non-metropolitan areas, we would then look into what we call greenfields as well as brownfields. Brownfields would be towns wherein there is a McDonald's, but then the market is strong enough to justify an additional restaurant. You could see on I think it's on your left, the scale that we have used in terms of estimates of sales. Obviously, this is not actual sales, but then it's an example of what we can do, as well as which areas would be greenfields. Greenfields would be markets wherein there is no McDonald's currently. We need to go investigate. But then we have realized in the past few years that there has been a significant change in terms of growth in towns that are outside metropolitan areas based on the sales that we do. So it does appear like there is an increase or there is reinvestment that is happening in small towns that was previously not there pre-COVID. So our biggest focus going forward is making sure that we do provide a strategic marketing strategy that speaks to non-metropolitan people or people that are residing in non-metropolitan areas for them to be able to relate onto the brand. Yes, obviously, there would be differences across provinces, and that is what we then assist the marketing team with for them to understand those individual or different provinces based on their demographic, based on their preference, based on their usage of current existing portfolio for them to then understand how they need to position their marketing strategy to speak to those individual customers, because based on the level of geography and the difference within the geographic settings and the different in terms of population spread as well as preference, we are able to assist them in that information. So this again is an example of how it would look like in the metros, which then just displays what I've explained, right? I'll go back onto it again just to explain a bit more. So the radii that you see there, the 2 kilometer radii around each of the restaurants, that shows areas that are currently serviced, meaning should there be an opportunity in those areas, we would rather not open that, but then open in areas that are outside. And then you can also see that those blocks, I think they are yellowish, they are different shades of yellow. So the darker they are, the much stronger the gap is for us as McDonald's to go and investigate. So this just shows an example of how we then present our findings and then communicate this to the business and then provide this as a roadmap to the guys that are on the field to go look for opportunities within those individual markets for us to try and open a restaurant there. This is another example again of how we would use it, this time in the Pretoria area. You can see on the map inset on the map inset on the left, I've zoomed in there to just showcase that at larger Atteridgeville area, because we had identified a couple of gaps there, but then you would see that there will be a lot of overlap in terms of the existing as well as the identified opportunities. So we would do look into these things. But like I said, there are instances wherein we would need to put in a store, even though there's significant overlap for obvious reasons, one being to keep out the competitor from going into that space. So it's all calculated. Yeah. Okay, I think this is my last slide. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. So once we have opened a restaurant, right, we will then allow operations to trade for almost for a year, for 12 months, like I've mentioned. Then once they have traded for like 12 months, we would then go back and try understand their performance within individual trade areas. So we use a tool which we call our quadrant analysis. So what the quadrant analysis does is it takes sales per capita by a ratio of sales per capita per 100,000 population, right? And it will then say to us, in those individual market areas or those individual trade areas or those individual catchment areas, you have a low density number of restaurants, but then those restaurants are of high performance. That is based on 100,000 population versus sales, right? Should it be in one of those type of markets indicated by the darker shade of green, it means those are the areas where you need to really grow. Those are the areas of focus for you to grow into. If it's an area that has the lighter green, which is high density, high performance, that is the ideal, which we together with operations, we need to make sure that we get into that, because we had identified a market. We say there's potential. For operations is to make sure that they capitalize on the potential that is there on the table. And the best indicator of that is having a scenario wherein you have a high density of restaurants per 100,000, and all of those restaurants are performing very well. In such geographic settings as well, or in such market, it shows or it tells us that you can grow in those areas, right? But then we do have other categories where there's low density number of restaurants, and those restaurants are not performing well. This tells us a couple of things. It means that our locations are not, or our restaurants are not positioned adequately to service the underlying market, or the type of restaurant that we have in that market does not fully capture the market potential at hand. For example, we might be having a non-drive-through restaurant in a market that would have required us to have a drive-through. So that is an area that we need to optimize. By optimizing, it means one of two things, especially in the areas of low density, low performance. We need to just check our location, whether we are located in a good site, or we must check whether we are there in the wrong store format. Should it be the case that we are in the wrong locations, it could be one of two reasons. One, we didn't do our homework, we didn't do our job well, or the market has moved, or the market has changed. It is possible to open a restaurant 5 years, and 5 years later, the market has shifted. For example, the example that is coming to my head now is the town of Groblersdal. About 5 to 10 years ago, the CBD was the best location you could ever chosen in that market. All the retailers, or most of the retailers, especially the ones that I've dealt with, were doing very well in that market within the CBD setting. And then a plus 25,000 square meter shopping center was developed on the edge of the town. That caused the market dynamic, the shopping patterns and behavior within that market to move. So bulk of the retailers that were now in the CBD started relocating over to the new mall, and that has killed the CBD setting completely. Such that if we had bought property and developed a McDonald's within the CBD, and the market moved to the periphery of the CBD, that market performance would change drastically. So it is possible that we had selected previously a good location, but then the market has moved and we have not moved with the market. And an optimization strategy there would be to move. And sometimes it's not possible. Then we would then have to do other marketing initiatives to ensure that we are still performing well from a sales point of view and capturing the right sales as required. The last category there would be high density, low performance. These are markets that we have opened more restaurants than the market required, which is, as you can see on the screen, highlighted in red. It could mean a couple of things. One, we have opened in those we are now reaching a point of saturation where restaurants are not capturing new sales, but are rather cannibalizing amongst each other. You're having a lot of sales transfer. Or secondly, the market has not grown as anticipated, because as part of our due diligence, when going into an area, we need to understand uh, whether there's growth potential within the next 3 to 5 years. And that information, we usually would obtain that from town council before we can make a decision of going into a market. There are instances wherein there are plans to have more residential grow, and that does not realize within the timeframes that were stipulated within the government documentations. Could be your special development frameworks, could be other circulars that they will draw up to ensure that the public has that knowledge in terms of what is coming next. We do have a couple of those examples. I could think of two from the top of my head. One in the south of Joburg, extreme south of Joburg in Sky City. When we opened that restaurant about 4 to 5 years ago, there was, I think, 5 to 7,000 residential households within the middle to upper income space. That market has almost tripled now. When we opened the restaurant, it was not performing well, meaning it was going to show low density, low performance outcomes, but then as time goes, the market goes and the conditions change. However, there are other markets wherein the government will then say, we would be building 30,000 houses within the next 3 to 5 years, and we believe them, ironically. And then we open the restaurant and that doesn't realize. And then that investment that we have made, thinking that the market will grow in future, it doesn't happen and we find ourselves in jeopardy. We need to come up with optimization strategy. Last example would be in the Four West area, in the River Sands area. We opened a restaurant there, I think 3 years ago. There was very low population density, but then the density has grown significantly and we have since seen our sales grow in that regard. So this last example, they do, I just gave them to indicate that markets do change, sometimes for the best and sometimes for the worst, and we make assumptions based on the information that we have at hand, the information that council gives us. And once the decision is made, we still need to come up with geographically based insights that will enable us to optimize those restaurants. So in closing, I've taken you through the process that we apply at McDonald's, using our GIS background, as well as all the geospatial informations and analytic techniques that we can apply for us to make better decisions in terms of the locations that we pick, as well as in terms of using the same system to build our regression models, as well as other models that we use to estimate sales. And thus far, since my tenure here at McDonald's, we have seen that really doing well in terms of our new sales opening, to an extent that in the past year, our contributions towards the overall performance of the company was about 4% of total company turnover, with existing restaurants also contributing that level in terms of percentage, contributing a similar type of percentage in terms of sales they generate. So it does show you that your graphic informations or geospatial analytics, it's it's it, it's becoming slowly one of the uh, undisputed champions, especially within the QSR space, for us to maximize our performance as well as to get a competitive advantage over our competitors, whom I believe they might be doing the same. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that is that. Thank you so very much for listening to me for the past couple of minutes. Hopefully, I did share some of the insights, some of the ways that we do things, especially with the application of geospatial information and techniques within the QSR space. Thank you so very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Cornelius. I think that was absolutely phenomenal. What I will do now is we'll open up the Q&A space. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to put up your hand, or if you aren't able to turn on your microphone, you're welcome to type a message in the message tab now, and we'll just give it a few minutes for questions. Sure, Cornelius, I think you answered everybody's questions there. I think that was amazing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was expecting some questions. I'm happy I answered all of the questions. And yeah, that's it.
It's I don't know about any of the other matric teachers out there, but I definitely feel inspired now to go set something GIS related for our students. And I think this is such an interesting and worthy topic that people might be talking about. I know that at the moment, schools are going through a complete transformation of allowing students to order fast foods to be delivered to schools. So I don't know, Cornelius, do you perhaps have any information based on that? Have you seen a rise of, for example, McDonald's, going to or being delivered to schools more often these days?
Sure, that's a difficult question to say. If they're ordering from, let's say they're ordering from Uber Eats or McDonald's or Uber Eats, Mr. Delivery, we are struggling to get that information from them, because remember, these are third-party service providers. They don't share that information because it's gold for them. If to get this information, obviously we would include this within our workflow to understand where our customers are and to include that within our gap analysis. So they're not sharing this information. It's like gold. They're not sharing this information with. It would be good to understand though. We have our own delivery system, which will be going online soon, and hopefully we should be able to get that level of detail.
Oh, fabulous. I see Thea's raised her hands. Thea, over to you.
Hi, Christy Lee. Cornelius, how many years ago?
It's been a long time.
I said I won't ask you any questions. I want to know, where's your geographical location? Where are you based?
I'm based in Joburg, Miss Kuman. I'm in Joburg.
Okay, I'm going to invite you to come and do a guest lecture if that's okay. Because can you remember when I taught you GIS, it was very difficult to make the reality of GIS in the class when I taught you vector and raster and so on. So I will reach out. I see you've got a LinkedIn profile, if you don't mind, Cornelius, to come and visit your old alma mater.
I'll come through, Miss Kuman. Only a pleasure. I'll definitely love to do it. I'll just tell me when and I'll be there.
Perfect. I see, Cornelius, you got some great praise in the message tab. Natasha said, superb presentation. Thank you for your time and sharing with us. People have asked, is it going to be shared on the mailing list? Yes, we will share out the information as well. So I think we'll wrap it up there for today. So just to end, Cornelius, thank you so much. We are most grateful for your time. It actually felt like I was sitting in a matric lesson right now, hearing all of the theory and then actually visualizing all the theory based on all your practical examples that you've given us today. And the way you just connected the theory to real world application has only deepened certainly my understanding of the topic, but I do hope everybody that is watching today. And I truly feel like I've walked away feeling a bit more inspired to do a bit more in the GIS sphere, especially in our classroom. But just thank you so much for your time, your expertise, and reminding us why fieldwork is so dynamic and especially relevant in today's world. I think, so often we see McDonald's restaurants and other restaurants popping up, but we don't realize how much work and the effort that is placed in the background to making sure that that restaurant is a success. So congratulations to you, and so amazing to have so many people join us this afternoon. I will just give a hint of our next webinar, but we will have something towards the end of March, and the webinar topic will be posted in the coming days. It is very interesting, very topical, so I will leave you that little bit of a hint. So for everybody, don't forget to order your McDonald's drink, and if you're hungry for dinner tonight, there's always a McDonald's burger. Unfortunately, my McDonald's this afternoon, as I quickly popped by, was out of the friends option. But grab a friend, grab a McDonald's, and just enjoy the memory of today's webinar. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you, Cornelius.
Thank you.